Hey guys! Today's video is going to be a hopefully not too long video about the tools and materials I use when making dolls. A lot of you did seem interested in seeing an update, especially now that I've started posting more dolls, so I hope you'll enjoy. And as mentioned in the video I posted this past weekend, I was planning on posting these basics videos as bonus videos, but I really wanted to get this one up before Friday's tutorial. Those of you who follow me on Instagram will know which doll project is coming up next. So let's get started. Starting with the clays that I've shown in a previous video that I've been using for dolls are Fimo Poppin' and Sunny Doll Collection. Fimo is known for being very flexible, Sunny is known for having that porcelain-like finish after baking. Both really great clays for making dolls. And then I also tend to mix in some Fimo Soft, white or this caramel color, just to give the skin either a lighter or darker shade. However, the clays I use mostly for my dolls now is the Fimo Professional Doll Art, which came out not that long ago, I think. And the colors I have here is beige, which to me makes absolutely no sense because it's super pale, and sand. I personally love how these arts work with. I still sometimes mix in the other doll clays, though I tend to just use these on their own and then maybe with some Fimo Soft or Primo mixed into them, like I did with my Pocahontas, where I mixed in brown and orange to give it a different shade. But I use these a lot for dolls. I also use them for the base sculptures of my animals, and I've already gone through 2 of these packs. Each of these have 350 grams, and this is also one of the reasons why it's very difficult for me to answer when some of you ask me how many packs of clay I use for each doll, because I use these, so I use far less than 1. However, I would say that for most of the dolls I've done tutorials for, you need less than 2 normal packs of clay. Also, because I get a lot of questions about how long I bake the dolls, I am planning on doing a video just on baking, but it says here on the package that, the temperature you're supposed to bake it at. I go for Celsius, so I always bake all my clay at 130 degrees Celsius, no matter which brand it is. And then it says up to 30 minutes. I have tested these out and baked them for more than an hour with absolutely no problems, so if you're baking them at the proper temperature, it should be fine. Next, because I get a lot of questions about the wire I use, I don't actually use any particular type of wire. I just buy random cheap wire when I find it. These were both found near florist supplies, I think, or maybe for doing Christmas decorations. I think the base metal is steel, but you can use any type of wire you want. I'm not sure about the gauge because it doesn't say on the packs, but I would say probably 0.6 or 0.8 millimeters. The only thing you kind of have to be aware of though is that if you do the armatures the same way I make them in my videos, no matter which type of wire you use, they are going to break at some point if you keep posing the doll. And then of course, if I have some much more bulky parts on the body, or maybe sometimes for the head, especially for my animal tutorials, I will cover the head or the armature with tin foil. This one is not at all a necessity, but I do get a lot of questions about it, so it's just a ceramic base I made myself to sculpt on, and I just made it for the convenience of being able to move it directly into my F-color stove or oven. Then for cutting tools, of course, we have the blades, and I do get a lot of questions asking how I keep my blades sharp, because the blades will go dull if you use them a lot, and I have tried sharpening these before, but I don't recall the result being very good. So I buy new blades every few months, and I get them from this website. These tissue blades are great quality, they're super sharp, and the only problem though is that this website only ships to countries within Europe. I don't remember how they compare to the tissue blades from Fimo, because I've only had one of those packs once, back in 2011, so I can't say if it's the same quality blade, but I do love these ones. Then there's my Exacto Knife or scalpel, which obviously I use for cutting. but you might be able to see that in some of my videos I also use it for smoothing out the surface of the clay, removing bumps and blending seams. This one is amazing quality, I love it, I would never get a different one. And one of the reasons why I also love it so much is because it has a ruler on the side, so it's super handy. The brand is Swan Morton, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I got it from the same website that I get my blades from, and I bought it a few years back. And as for the blades, you do need to buy specific ones because they clamp into this little piece here. And I think each of these packs comes with 5 blades. Next is ball tools and dotting tools. I got both of these from eBay, and you can usually find these if you search for cake decorating tools, and for these you just have to search for dotting tool or nail art. Again, I tend to get a lot of questions about this blue one because it has a more pointed tip. This is just one of these normal dotting tools. It happened to just come with a more pointy end, and I have had multiple packs that had this type of tool. And then I've kind of customized the other end to make it even more pointy. I do have a video on my second channel, SCS Craft, where I show how to do this. But these are great for creating shapes in the clay, so the hollows of the eyes, maybe run down to start making the bridge of the nose. You can make the cheekbones with them, and depending on the size of the face or the size of the detail you're trying to create, you can just choose a different size. You can pretty much make an entire face just using dotting tools. And back in 2011, when I first started, dotting tools and needle tools were pretty much the only thing I used to create a face. Then I have my silicone tools, and again, this is not a necessity. You can use your fingers to do a lot of what I use these for, which is smoothing out the clay, but some of them are also really good for creating details, and I do like them. I got these two from local shops, so I can't really help you with where to get those, but I got these smaller ones from eBay, and I just searched for clay sculpting tools. What I really like them for is for smoothing out the clay after you've gone over it with dotting tools or whatnot, but they're also great for shaping, great for creating cheekbones, pushing down the clay if you need more of a frown or a lower set eyebrow. You can even use some of them, this one is my favorite, to create nostrils and just fine details around the nose where you don't necessarily want to use a needle tool, which may create very harsh lines, but you still want that definition. I do have a video showing how you can make your own from mold putty, so I'm gonna link that in the info box if you haven't seen it. Needle tools are one of my absolutely most used types of tools, both when creating miniature food, animals and dolls. I do use a variety of different ones. The type of the needle tool is not important as long as the needle itself gives the effect you're looking for, because the point on these are all different, and therefore you can create different effects using them. The one on the left is the most expensive one I have. Unfortunately, I don't remember what it was called, and the website no longer has it. This one came in a set from a hardware store that had an assortment of different blades for craft knives, and this last one was from a local craft shop. It came in a set of 3, and I have no idea what they were for. You don't need to go out and spend a lot of money on a needle tool. Sewing needles are often the best option because you can get any size you want, and you can just make a handle from polymer clay. So for facial details, I like using pastels a lot. The ones over here are just shavings of pastel that I've mixed to get the colors I wanted. And then this one is a pan pastel. I got those recently and I absolutely love them. They apply kind of like makeup, so if you see something that looks like a makeup applicator, that is what I'm using. The brand you use doesn't really matter, although, and this applies to both paint, pastel, and whatever you're using to kind of decorate the face, I would recommend buying some better quality brands, just because the pigments in these are made to last. They're made to be light fast and artist quality, whereas if you buy the very cheap brands, the very cheap sets that are made more so targeted for kids, they might not last over time. And of course, there can also be a huge difference in the way they feel to work with, the way they look, the amount of pigmentation, etc. The acrylic paints I have are Joe Saunders and Folk Art. Joe Saunders is my favorite brand of acrylic paint. I love the consistency, I love the pigmentation and color payoff, and I just overall love how they feel to work with. Folk Art is obviously a much cheaper alternative, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I would still recommend getting some proper quality paints, especially if you're spending a long time on a project. Reason being is that often with the cheaper brands of paint, it could also happen with the more expensive brands, but often with the cheaper brands you'll see that the color starts to kind of bleed or be dragged into the clay after a while and basically ruin your sculpture. I had a bunny charm that I made when I first started making really simple charms, and I used some super cheap paint to paint the pink nose and the inside of the ears. And after a couple of years, the paint on the surface had gone completely white and all the pigment had been dragged into the clay, so it had this pink ring all the way around that you then couldn't remove. A new tool to be added to my list of doll supplies is colored pencils. And I haven't actually used these in any of my videos yet. You'll see me using them in Friday's tutorial. This was just something I decided to try out because I had a box of colored pencils next to me, but I wanted something that would work better for details than pastels and would be easier to work with than acrylic paint. Something where I could create fine detail work, but also create very smooth transitions between colors or soft shading. The brands I'm using are Faber-Castell and Caran d'Ache because those are my favorite brands to use for drawing. I have my pre-made eyeballs, and I do have a tutorial for the eyeball cane on my channel, though when I make the portrait or character dolls, I prefer hand painting them for each specific doll, just to really be able to make it look like that person or character. The eyes for my character dolls are just pre-baked pieces of white clay, and I make them for each specific doll, so I don't have them pre-made like these ones. Another great tool is knitting needles because you can use them to sculpt hands and feet on, and you can actually bake them. For sealing the details I use Renaissance wax or matte glaze. Sometimes I'll use both, sometimes I'll use one of them. It really just depends on what I've been using to create the details, because with the Renaissance wax you have to apply it with a soft cloth or tissue, and if you're applying this directly on top of pastel, it tends to just remove the pastel instead, which is not what you want. So if I have a lot of pastel on the base, I'll usually use the matte glaze. And then the last kind of material is fabric, ribbon and lace. I do have quite an extensive collection, I guess, but I find that no matter how much I buy and how much I have, I never have that one specific type of fabric or ribbon or whatever that I need when making each of the character dolls. And then together with the fabric, I also recommend having some fabric stiffener. And then this fray stay is really great for keeping the fabric from fraying, but you can also seal the edges with a glaze or a glue. And if you want to see all the different types of hair and fur I have for my dolls, and animals for that matter, please check out the video I posted this past weekend because I go through all the different types in there, including some vegan alternatives. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.